In this video, we're going to look at how to use the discussions tool in Canvas. Using discussions in a face-to-face class can be very helpful, and using them in an online class is a vitally important part of ensuring you meet the Department of Education's regular and substantive interaction requirements. I do very much recommend that you read over the different types of suggested discussion boards that are listed in the page that you clicked on to get to this video. That is very helpful information for thinking about how you want to set up discussions in your class. Creating a discussion board in Canvas isn't difficult, but the settings can cause some confusion, so that's what we're going to focus on in this video. There are two types of settings for discussions: global discussions that apply to all the discussions in a course, and settings for individual discussions. First, we're going to look at those that apply to all discussions for the whole course. To set the course discussion settings, you're going to first make sure that you are in the Discussions tab, and then you're going to click on the little gear in the upper right-hand corner of the Discussions page. The first setting here applies only to the instructor view of discussions. By default, a discussion post will be marked as read after you click on it. If you check this box, discussions will only be marked as read if you manually mark the reply as read. There are 5 settings under Student Settings, and by default, all but the second one are going to be checked. The first one, Create Discussion Topics, is the first one I want to draw your attention to. Unless you have a specific reason why you want to allow your students to create their own discussion boards, I highly recommend unchecking this box. If you leave it checked, your students will have the ability to create their own discussion boards rather than posting to the discussion boards you have created for the class. This can result in multiple students accidentally creating their own new discussion boards rather than replying to the ones you've created, which is confusing to try to follow and difficult to keep track of for grading purposes. So I really recommend unchecking this one. The second option goes with the first one and cannot be checked if the first one is unchecked. This will allow students to create their own discussion topics and do it anonymously. The third option, Edit and Delete Their Own Posts, is another one you might want to consider unchecking if you're going to assign graded discussions. There's an option in the settings for the individual discussion boards that we'll look at in a minute that you can set to require students to post before they can read other students' posts. This helps to encourage independent thinking and generally results in a more robust discussion. But if you keep this box checked, students can just post anything, read over what everyone else wrote, and then edit their original post and change it to something they think is better or that more resembles what everyone else wrote. So that's just something to consider. This next setting will allow students to attach a file to their discussion posts, and then the last one will allow students to report the post of another student as being inappropriate. If a student does report a reply or post, a notification to that effect will be sent to you. After you've made any changes to these settings, make sure you click Save Settings. When you're ready to create a discussion, you'll click this plus discussion button in the upper right-hand corner. You're going to give your discussion a title and then give your students directions on what you want them to post about and the expectations for the post. You also have all of your rich content editor tools, so if you wanted to, you could include a video of yourself or include a video from YouTube or a link to an external site that you want the students to comment on. Students will have the rich content editor for their replies as well. If you're having students share a recording of themselves, please make sure to instruct them to do this through Canvas Studio. Otherwise, video files will use up students' allotted file space pretty quickly. Now we get to the settings for an individual discussion. The first 3 have to do with anonymous discussions. The first one is enabled by default, which will keep the discussion responses from being anonymous. The next will allow students to choose whether they want to remain anonymous, and the third makes all discussion posts anonymous. Next is the option to disallow threaded replies. I have always kept this unchecked because threaded replies keep student replies to each other's posts under the post they're replying to, which makes it much easier to follow the discussion. Next is the setting I mentioned earlier, which requires students to post their own response before they can see the posts from other students. Enabling the podcast feed allows you to export your discussion to an external RSS feed. If you want this to be a graded post, check the graded box. This will create a column in the gradebook and will allow you to access SpeedGrader for this discussion. This will also display the points possible, display grade as, and assignment groups fields further down on the page. If the graded box is checked, you'll also see the Assign Graded Checkpoints option. Checkpoints allow you to set 2 due dates for each discussion, one for when the student's original response to a topic is due, and a later one for when students have to respond to the post of their classmates. Checking the checkpoints box will display additional checkpoint settings further down where you can designate the number of points possible for the student's original reply to the discussion topic, how many responses to classmates' posts are required, and how many total points are possible for the additional replies. You'll see the total points possible listed below. Back up to the options. You could choose to allow liking if you want to allow students to give posts a thumbs up. I cover group discussions in a later video, so I'll leave it unchecked for now. Under View, you can select the default thread state. Expanded will show each reply to the initial post as well as all the replies to each subsequent post without having to click on the individual posts to see any responses. Collapsed will just show each response to the initial post. Students will have to click on Replies to view additional responses. If this is a graded discussion, you'll need to put how you want the grade to be displayed, either as points, percentage, complete, incomplete, and so on. And if you have assignment groups set up, this is where you will designate what assignment group you want this discussion to be part of. There's also another video on peer reviews that we'll cover later, so we're going to leave this turned off for now as well. Under assignment settings is the Assign To field, where you can choose to assign this to everyone in the class, or if you were teaching more than one section using the same course shell, this is where you could assign different sections, different due dates if you wanted to. If you're using discussion checkpoints, you'll see additional date fields here. The first one is the date by which students have to have posted their original reply to the discussion. The second one is the date by which they need to have responded to their classmates' posts. You may want to consider setting the first one for a couple of days before the required replies due date to make sure most students have responded to the original topic before they have to reply to each other. If you needed to assign a different due date to an individual student or a group of students who need extra time, you can click the Add Assign To button and give individual students their own due date. When you're finished, click Save and add the discussion to the appropriate module.